Admit it, my manager said, sliding the termination papers across the table while every employee in the store stared at me. You were the only one closing the nights the money disappeared. I was standing in our Monday staff meeting at Hawthorne Electronics, still in my hoodie from the night shift he'd called me back from. Nobody spoke. Not Chloe, not the cashiers I'd covered shifts for. Nobody. Derek pointed at a stack of printed shortage reports, like he'd been waiting for this moment for weeks. For 2 years, I trusted you with this store, he said, and this is how you repay me. I didn't say a word, because something about the whole thing felt rehearsed. Then Derek looked at everyone and said, "Security already confirmed it." But right before I signed the papers, the meeting room door opened. And one of the security officers walked in holding a laptop. "Actually," he said, staring directly at Derek, "we need to replay one more camera angle first. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates." The room went completely still. Not the normal kind of silence either. The kind where people stop breathing because they realize something just went off script. Derek's jaw tightened for half a second before he forced a smile. "We already reviewed the footage," he said quickly. "There's nothing else to—" "There is now," the security officer interrupted. He was older, maybe late 50s, wearing a gray corporate security jacket with a folder tucked under one arm. Another officer stayed by the door without saying a word. Nobody moved. I could hear the buzzing fluorescent lights over the meeting table. Someone near the vending machines shifted in their chair. Chloe kept staring down at her hands like she physically couldn't look at me. Derek slowly leaned back. "This is unnecessary," he said, calm voice, controlled. But I'd worked under him long enough to notice the difference between confident and nervous. And he was nervous. The officer set the laptop on the table and turned toward me first. "Indira Patel." I nodded. "You closed on March 7th, 10th, 15th, and 19th. "Yeah." Derek immediately cut in. "Which are the same nights cash disappeared?" He said it loudly, like he needed everyone focused on me before anything else could happen. I looked around the room again. 8 employees, 2 assistant supervisors, everyone avoiding eye contact except Marcus from inventory, who looked genuinely confused. That hurt more than the accusation. Because 2 hours earlier, these people had been texting me memes about customers and asking if I could swap shifts next weekend. Now my locker had already been emptied into a cardboard box sitting beside the door. Like they'd decided I was guilty before I even walked in. The officer opened a file on the laptop. "Before we continue," he said, "I need clarification on store closing procedures." Derek answered before anyone else could speak. "The closer counts tills, logs deposits, secures the safe, and leaves through the rear exit." And who had closing authority during those dates? Derek looked directly at me. "She did." There it was again, that rehearsed certainty. Not anger, not disappointment. Preparation. Like he'd practiced this conversation in advance. That's when I remembered something that suddenly made my stomach turn. 3 weeks earlier, Derek had stopped me while I was counting registers after close. "Clock out before you finish," he'd said casually. "Corporate, complaining about overtime." I told him I still had deposits left to verify. And he'd smiled. "I'll handle the rest." At the time, I thought he was helping me. Now, sitting in that meeting room with termination papers inches from my hand, I realized every shortage report on the table happened after nights Derek insisted on helping. The security officer clicked another folder open. Then he looked at Derek and asked one question that changed the entire room. "If Ms. Patel stole the money," he said carefully, "why does your employee access code appear in the building after she already left?" Derek laughed immediately. "Too quickly." "That's your big discovery," he said, leaning back in his chair like the whole thing had become ridiculous. "Managers come back after close all the time." The officer didn't react. "At midnight." Derek shrugged. Sometimes. Nobody else in the room spoke, but the energy had shifted. I could feel it. 10 minutes ago, everyone was staring at me like I'd already been caught. Now people were glancing between Derek and the laptop. Chloe looked like she was going to throw up. The security officer turned the screen slightly so everyone could see the access log. March 7th, rear entrance override used at 11:21 p.m. March 10th, 11:18 p.m. March 15th, 11:26 p.m. March 19th, 11:24 p.m. Every single entry belonged to Derek. And every timestamp happened after my employee badge showed I'd already left the building. Derek crossed his arms. I came back for paperwork, inventory reports. This proves nothing. But you told us security already confirmed she stole the money, Marcus said from the far side of the table. Derek's eyes snapped toward him, because the shortages happened under her shifts. Still, Marcus said carefully, why didn't you mention coming back? Derek didn't answer right away. That pause was the first crack. I watched him shift in his chair, fingers tapping once against the table before stopping himself. Tiny movement, barely noticeable unless you knew him. I knew him. For 2 years, I'd watched Derek control every situation in that store. Angry customers, corporate visits, inventory disasters. He always stayed calm. But now his voice had changed. Sharper, faster. Look, he said, turning back towards security. If you're accusing me of something, say it directly. We're not accusing anyone yet, the officer replied. We're reviewing inconsistencies. Then he clicked open another file. Derek's confidence faded for just a second. And Chloe suddenly whispered, almost too quietly to hear. Oh my God. The officer connected the laptop to the TV mounted on the wall. A grainy black and white camera feed appeared on screen. And Derek stopped moving completely. The entire room stared at the screen. It wasn't footage from the registers or the safe like everyone expected. It was a side hallway near the inventory room, a camera most of us forgot even existed. The timestamp flashed across the corner. March 15th, 11:02 p.m. There's no audio on this angle, the officer said, but the timeline matters. The footage showed me behind the front counter counting the final till drawer exactly the way I always did. Bills stacked by denomination. Deposit slips double-checked. Safe locked. Nobody spoke while they watched. I looked exhausted on screen, hair tied up. Hoodie sleeves pushed to my elbows, just trying to finish another closing shift. Then the video showed me shutting off the office light and walking toward the rear exit. Timestamp, 11:14 p.m. The officer paused the footage. Employee badge records confirm Ms. Patel exited the building at this time. Derek folded his arms tighter. Okay, and... The video resumed. 7 minutes later, the rear door opened again. Derek walked inside carrying a black backpack. A couple people in the room actually turned toward him at the same time. He noticed it immediately. I told you already, he snapped. Paperwork. But the footage kept playing. Derek looked down the hallway first, checking if anyone was there, before walking directly toward the cash office. Then he disappeared inside. Timestamp, 11:22 p.m. The video fast-forwarded. 11:41 p.m. Derek finally exited the office again, still carrying the backpack. Only now it looked fuller. The room went dead quiet. Marcus muttered, "What the hell?" Derek stood up so suddenly, his chair scraped backward across the floor. "This is insane," he said. "You're showing a hallway video like it proves theft." "No," the officer replied calmly. "The hallway footage only confirmed who entered the office." Derek's expression changed. Not angry this time. Alarmed. The officer reached for the keyboard again. "Because the important file," he said, "wasn't video." He clicked another folder labeled Audio Recovery, Cash Office. and Chloe immediately started crying. Nobody looked at me anymore. Every eye in that meeting room was locked on Derek. The officer pressed play. At first, all we heard was static and the muffled hum of the store's air conditioning. Then came the sound of a door shutting. A keypad beeped. Metal drawers sliding open. And Derek's voice. "She's perfect for this." My stomach dropped. Nobody in the room moved. More sounds followed. Cash bands snapping, paper rustling, a zipper opening. Then Derek spoke again, quieter this time. "Nobody checks the closer." Marcus swore under his breath. Derek suddenly pointed at the laptop. That audio could be edited. The officer ignored him. "Recovered from the store's alarm backup server," he said. "The local files were deleted manually 2 days ago." Deleted manually. The room turned colder after that sentence. Because now it wasn't just suspicion anymore. Someone had tried to erase evidence. And everyone knew who had access. Chloe finally broke. "I didn't know he was taking that much," she blurted out through tears. Derek whipped around. "Chloe." "He told me to change discrepancy forms," she said, voice shaking. "He said corporate would blame all of us if audits failed." The words hit the room like a car crash. I stared at her in disbelief. All those nights she acted nervous around me. All the weird silence whenever shortages came up. She knew. Not everything, but enough. The officer opened another document on screen. Deposit reports beside employee access logs. Missing deposits increased alongside large withdrawals from Mr. Lawson's personal accounts, tied to online gambling services. Derek's face went pale. "You pulled my bank records." "We pulled records attached to an active internal theft investigation." For the first time since this started, Derek looked genuinely cornered. Not confident, not prepared. Cornered. Then the officer asked quietly, "Would you like us to play the final recovered clip?" Derek didn't answer. But the look on his face told everyone in the room exactly how bad the next file was going to be. The officer clicked the final file. This time, the recording started immediately. A phone dialing tone echoed through the meeting room speakers. Then Derek's voice came through clearly. "Yeah, it's handled." Nobody even blinked. There was a short pause before he spoke again. "Once she signs the termination papers, it all dies with her." My chest tightened. Across the table, Chloe covered her mouth. Derek's recorded voice gave a nervous laugh. "By the time corporate audits this place again, I'll already be transferred." The file ended. Silence. Not awkward silence, not uncertain silence. The kind that settles after something irreversible happens. Derek looked around the room like he was trying to find one person still on his side. Nobody looked back at him. The security officer finally closed the laptop. "Mr. Lawson manipulated closing schedules for 6 months," he said. "He repeatedly re-entered the store after employees clocked out, removed cash from deposits, altered discrepancy reports, and deleted surveillance footage from local storage." Every sentence felt heavier than the last. I sat there staring at the termination papers, still sitting inches from my hand. He'd already decided this would end with me. That was the part I couldn't stop thinking about. Not the money. Not even the accusation. The fact that he planned the humiliation first. The public meeting, the speeches, the fake disappointment. He wanted everyone to believe I was a thief before I ever had the chance to defend myself. Marcus looked at Derek with disgust. "You were really gonna pin all of this on her." Derek opened his mouth, but nothing came out. For the first time in 2 years, he had absolutely no control left. Then one of the HR representatives stepped forward from the doorway. I hadn't even noticed her arrive during the recordings. "Derek Lawson," she said firmly, "your employment with Hawthorne Electronics is terminated effective immediately." One of the security officers moved beside him. Derek looked directly at me then. Not angry. desperate, like he wanted me to say something that could still pull him out of this. I didn't. He grabbed his jacket silently while employees moved out of his way. Nobody spoke to him as security escorted him out of the meeting room. The door shut behind him. And just like that, the pressure that had been crushing my chest all morning finally broke. I leaned back in my chair, shaking harder than I realized. Chloe looked at me carefully. "Indira, I'm sorry." I honestly didn't know what to say to her, because part of me understood she'd been scared. But another part kept replaying the moment she sat there while Derek accused me in front of everyone. HR slid the termination papers off the table and tore them straight down the middle. "You are not being dismissed," she said. "You'll receive full back pay for missed hours during the investigation." Investigation. That word hit me differently now. This had started long before today. Corporate already suspected Derek. They just needed enough evidence to prove it. And he'd gotten arrogant enough to think framing me would save him. Over the next few weeks, everything came out. Derek had stolen more than $38,000 across multiple stores before transfers and weak audits let him keep moving locations. Police charged him with felony theft, fraud, and evidence tampering. Chloe cooperated fully with investigators and kept her job under probation. Most of the staff apologized to me eventually. Some looked genuinely ashamed. A few couldn't even meet my eyes. Corporate offered me my position back with a raise. I turned it down. A month later, I accepted an accounting assistant position with the regional audit team that uncovered the theft in the first place. And the strangest part, my last day back at Hawthorne wasn't emotional at all. I walked into the empty store, grabbed the last box from my locker, and dropped my old employee key into the return slot by the office door. The same office Derek thought would bury me. Then I walked out knowing the footage that was supposed to destroy my life ended up exposing his instead.